So can you give us your input on how to get the politicians to understand, in my opinion, there is no more money?
I wonder if we can, and one of those ways, of course, we're doing this is through voting. And today, of course, I voted, and I think we all did so far. But beyond that, I would say that we have to eliminate the public funding of unions. The unions are bankrupting this state, this country. We can no longer afford it. Also, I would say, besides the unions, I would say just any entitlement programs. We have to cut back on welfare, perhaps, or we may have to look at Social Security, or even Medicare. Maybe those things need to have a sunset on them. I mean, that might be a possibility, but we can no longer. I don't know. I haven't heard any politicians really come up with any great solutions so far. Everybody is hesitant in making any cuts because they don't want to be mean-mouthed. But the reality is we can no longer continue in the red. So. Thanks.
Walter, give us your thoughts on how we can get the taxing and spending under control.
Well, rather than give you a specific policy answer, I'd like to kind of address the underlying philosophical issue there, and that is federalism. When we started things out in this country, we had what is referred to by political scientists as a layer cake federalism, which is to say that the federal government had its specific enumerated powers, the state government had its specific things that it was empowered to do, and local governments had things that they were left with to figure out. Since then, over the course of 230 years of various cases and legislation, we've developed what is referred to as a marble cake federalism, which is to say that the federal government and the state government and the local governments are all intertwined and affecting each other, and it's mostly at the benefit of the top level over the lower levels. And so, for instance, you have in this state what's referred to as local government aid, or LGA, where all of the cities contribute to a pool which is effectively redistributed to cities throughout the state. I call it municipal welfare. That's essentially what it is. And it causes problems with essential services in cities such as Minneapolis. Every year, I have a friend who's a Minneapolis firefighter. Every year their jobs are under threat. And it's because of this political game that gets played between the city council and the mayor and the state legislature and the governor, of just pointing the blame at each other for funding. You're not giving us enough local government aid, and the governor coming back and saying, well, how is it our responsibility to keep the city of Minneapolis from burning down? That's a local responsibility. We need to get back to differentiating what each level of government is supposed to do, and the benefit of that is, under the marble cake situation, you have local politicians who can defer blame to the state politicians, and you have state politicians who are willing to deal with that because they have control, and they like having control over local systems of government. If you get those distinctions back in place, then I will be able to go down to my neighbor a few blocks away who happens to be a city council person and harp on them about what they're doing down at City Hall. And it'll actually matter. They won't be able to say, well, it's because of those bums in St. Paul. So I think distinguishing levels of government is one of the most important things we can do to start getting us back on track, because then the people will have a stronger effect on their government.
Good thoughts. There's been some talk in the news, and I've done some reading lately on the United Nations and their encroachment on American sovereignty. And I was wondering if any of you had any thoughts on that. What I've been reading about is called Agenda 21, and it's frightening when you read into it and you look at the original sources of materials. Do any of you have any thoughts on that, or any input on Agenda 21?
From what I know, and I just really started studying on Agenda 21, most of our politicians don't even know what it is because it's been very well hidden. Agenda 21 is actually dominated by the UN, and it's under the guise of sustainable development. And under sustainable development, you could have many different factions. It could be, let's say it's our environment. And under that could be save the whales, let's say. Okay, but the funding, where the funding comes from and who it goes to, it is very secretive. But this is the UN's attempt at this. This engulfs all the global warming stuff we've been told about. When it comes to our roadways, they encourage these crowded roads that we're on. Just enforces what they're trying to do, and that is to control us as a people, and that's what Agenda 21 is about. And I would hope that our politicians start getting on board with this, and we need to start blowing the whistle, and we need to withdraw from the UN. Mr. Paul tried to get us out, and I can't remember the name of the bill, but he tried at one point 2-3 years ago, I believe it was back in 2008. But it was shot down. But we need to withdraw from the UN, because those people are our enemy. They are no friend to the United States.
I agree. I think the UN is slowly working its way into the fabric of our society through local government. You talked about traffic. If traffic is never fixed, then people are going to be frustrated. They're going to be looking for a solution from anybody. And someone's going to come along with the solution. It may not be the right solution, but at least it is a solution. So I agree, the UN is something we should be divorced from as soon as we can. Anyone else have any input on the UN or state sovereignty or American sovereignty issues that we're facing today?
I would just like to say this Agenda 21, I had not personally heard about it, but it sounds like it could be a serious thing, so I will definitely look into it. As far as the United Nations goes, that was formed a long time ago to help combat tyrants, but it's evolved into much more. In my opinion, the United States of America, we're the United States. That's the United Nations, and we're a part of it, of course, as a nation, but I think we have everything we need in this country. We don't need to be part of the United Nations necessarily. We can function without it. We're a superpower. We have all the oil we would ever need if we can actually tap into it. We have very bright people. Not that there's not other bright people in the world, but we're the land of opportunity, the greatest nation in the world, and no one who is here can fail if they try. When you try, you cannot fail in this nation. But as far as the United Nations, no, we don't necessarily need them to sustain. We could do without them.
Do you have any thoughts on the UN? Do you agree with what the premise is?
Yeah, I do. I think that I also am not terribly well versed in Agenda 21. I am aware of it. I have heard of it. My understanding is that it's basically an attempt to subvert national sovereignty through the co-opting of local governments. You get local governments to again sign on to getting some money in exchange for some control, much like the federal government does with our highways. The reason we have a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit is because the federal government tells us that's what we need to have in order to receive funding. You know, he who pays the piper calls the tune. And the UN is in a very similar way, again with the kind of marble cake federalism model, trying to worm its way into control of this nation and our states and our local municipalities. I think it's important to speak to why global government, which you hear people call for in various capacities, mostly those who are in the ruling class, why it can't work. It's not that it's a bad idea. Of course it'd be a great idea to have a level of government that if it was based upon the same type of political philosophy as our Constitution was. The problem is that you're not going to see that emerge from the collective cultures of the world. We are an anomaly. America is an anomaly both historically and geographically in terms of its value of freedom and its unique frankly, libertarian political philosophy. And you're not going to get a global government constituted in such a fashion that it respects those same rights. And we see that in the way the UN operates. And I'm not terribly well versed in the specifics, but it's my understanding that you can have tyrannical or communist regimes vetoing whatever is put forward as long as they're on the Security Council. Why is it that we're valuing the opinion of folks who don't value the freedoms of their citizens? So this idea that because the United Nations exists, and because there's a kind of an emotional desire for global unity, we should cede to the will of the UN, is rather misguided.
Let's go back to the Tea Party and the structure of the Tea Party. There's been said that the Tea Party is a wing of the GOP, or helping the GOP more than the Democrats, the DFL. How do you feel the structure of the Tea Party helps or hurts any of the political parties?
Well, Mike, I think that the structure of the Tea Party, as I know it, it's a grassroots movement from the ground up. So an everyday citizen can become involved and actually become a leader in the Tea Party movement. And in that way, there are so many leaders in the Tea Party movement. There's not one specific leader. And I think that both political parties, Democrat and Republican, worry about the Tea Party because they know that the Tea Party are some very motivated citizens that are willing to attend rallies, go to their offices, hold their feet to the fire, and actually affect a positive change in this nation, to uncover the work that they're doing that may not be good for our nation, that they might be doing under the table. You may have seen in the news lately, we have 2 Congress people getting in trouble for under the table dealings, House ethics rules. They're getting in trouble for that. And I think that has a great deal to do with people saying, hey, what are you doing over there? We're watching you. So for that, they don't know quite how to react to the Tea Party. They have no idea. You can call one person a name, or you can try to if you knew who that one person was, but in retrospect, what do? They call the Tea Party a bunch of names, when in reality it's everyday citizens. So I guess they can keep calling people names, but it's not going to stop anyone. We're just not silent, and we will keep growing.